And good morning, Neil.
Good morning. Don't stream and drive.
Apologies.
Here we go.
Yeah, we got carried away talking, so we're a minute late. We apologise for that, but we're here full steam ahead, and it's Don't Stream and Drive Day. And I suppose the best place to start, Neil, is with an introduction.
Yeah, well, you're Stephen Healy, so good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning, Neil. Hi, John.
Yeah, good morning. Those people that know me will know me very well indeed already. But my name's Neil Jewson Smith. I'm a sergeant with Cheshire Police. I've worked for two forces in my career. I'm currently with Cheshire Police, who I've been with since 2005. Prior to that, I was with Greater Manchester Police from 1991. So if your maths and my maths are correct, and I'm not messed my pension up, I've got just over 28 years service and just less than 2 years to do. On social media, I've been a strong advocate for the police use of social media for many years. You'll find I initially started on Twitter as the custody sergeant anonymously, when Twitter was quite a scary place for police officers to be. And gradually that morphed into Sergeant TCS, TCS being the custody sergeant, because once I left custody and I went to work in the control room where I work now, the custody sergeant name didn't really make a great deal of sense. So I've been Sergeant TCS ever since, and that's me. So thank you for hosting. Thank you for having me. Thank you for being with me. You guys again talking about Don't Stream and Drive on Don't Stream and Drive Day.
Well, you're welcome. That's what we look forward to. We look forward to this day because we can actually do something to support the cause and to get the word out about distracted driving. Now, I suppose the best place to start is with a simple question, and if I can find it, I've got it. What is streaming and driving? Because we need to know that in order to know what not to do.
What not to do, exactly. Well, if I give a little background to start off with where it came from, many years back now, we're probably talking 2015. There's a gentleman by the name of Nick Keane, who at the time was the College of Policing's digital engagement lead. And on a forum that I'm part of, he asked a question and said, has anybody heard of this Periscope? Does anybody know what it's about? Can people, is anybody using it? I didn't know what it was. But it turned out that Periscope, as we know, was the live stream platform that Twitter had purchased. And being the kind of person that I am and pushing the boundaries, being, I suppose, a little bit of a social media disruptor as far as policing was concerned, I got involved with Periscope, started to look and saw some great opportunities to use that within the policing context and also for Sergeant TCS. But what I started to notice was that people using that platform were live streaming video whilst they were driving. So what is live streaming? Live streaming is your phone or whatever device it is that you use to connect to the internet, using your phone and its camera and photograph video functionality in order to capture video footage and immediately broadcast that footage onto the internet for other people to see, so that you are streaming your video live streaming to the internet. One of the things that's come up over the years that's become a little bit more apparent now, as well as live streaming and driving, is also those people who pre-record whilst driving and then post to a social channel, such as Snapchat. Snapchat, you actually capture the footage, and I'm a bit behind the times with Snapchat because I don't really use it anymore, so unless it's changed. But my understanding with Snapchat is that you record the footage and then you say, yes, post it to my channel. So it's not actually live, but the process that you're going through of holding your phone and recording and pressing it as that you would if whilst you were live streaming is exactly the same. But that's what it is. It's about taking the video footage that you're capturing there and then and pushing it live onto the internet to share with friends and family and stuff. And it's marketed in the ways of, you know, you're taking a balloon flight drifting gently over the Serengeti, and you share that broadcast with your friends to say, look, we're over the Serengeti, the sun's coming up, it's dawn, it's fantastic, how amazing. And there's an awful lot of live stream use that does things like that. People, you know, we're at the Sydney Opera House, look, here we are, and there's the bridge and all these kind of things. But people are using it while they're behind the wheel, and there's no place for it. There's no need for it. And in pretty much every occasion that I've seen it, it's the most mundane, boring, unnecessary content. That you think, why would you do that? You sort of see on somebody's epitaph if they've been daft enough to do this and ended up killing themselves. You sort of think, at the time of his or her death, they were recording their steering wheel and what their speedometer was saying. Really? Yeah. It's hardly a noble purpose.
Some of the social media channels, though, they're actually starting to get proactive about this. On Reddit, it's an automatic account deletion
what
now.
Streaming and driving is.
Streaming and driving. So, some social responsibility is coming about in this area.
We're still there?
We can hear you. Can you hear John? Yeah.
I can't see or hear John at all.
All right. Shall I?
Yeah. If right, we'll take it in turns. This is live video. Things tend to have. Yeah. John just told a story about Reddit, which he'll tell hopefully when he returns in a moment.
Okay.
And their attitude to streaming and driving has changed. Right now, the question is, can you see John?
Yeah.
I can see John. He's
good. Right.
Okay. What I was saying was that some of the social channels are starting to take some form of responsibility. It's an automatic account deletion if you're seen streaming and driving on Reddit now.
Excellent. Now that's good news. I didn't know that. I mean, it's not a platform that I use. Snapchat went through a phase a while ago where it flagged up the motion and said, "Are you moving? You shouldn't be doing it. Don't snap and drive," and so on. But I don't know whether, like I say, Snapchat was a fad for me that sort of came and went quite quickly. But it's good to see that people are getting involved, and I think it's going to take a long time to get there. Some of the things that I've started to report. Some of the broadcasts I see on Snapchat, I've started to report them to Snapchat. There isn't actually a process to be able to say, I think this is dangerous, but it just says that you find that there's a way around where you say, I think there's just something that I don't find right about this. I think there's something wrong with this, and hopefully they will pick it up. But as ever with these things, when you're talking to the likes of Snapchat or Twitter or Facebook, trying to get a reply from them or a response is very difficult. I've tagged Snapchat into countless broadcasts that I've posted over the last few weeks with the Snapchat idiot hashtag that we've been using. But you can only hope that gradually somebody sees it over a period of time and says, well, what can we do about this? And maybe we can instill some change.
That would be good, because they can do a lot more technology-wise. They can do a lot more than individuals can or organizations can. They can actually control what's actually broadcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult, and I think with the amount of if you think of Twitter, for example, or Facebook, where Zuckerberg has recently been saying that he wants help with legislation to try and control some of the content on Facebook, but I think it's helping people understand not to do it, and giving people an opportunity to be able to point to somebody that is doing it and allow the organization to then do something about it, as opposed to just ignoring it. If there's like a repository that it just goes into, this is streaming and driving, boom, people look at it and perhaps send a warning to the user and say, look, we've reviewed this broadcast, you would appear to have been driving at the time you were live streaming. We will, if you continue with this, we will sort of suspend your account for 3 months or whatever it happens to be, to try and build that up. Who knows? There's lots of options.
Indeed. Now, talking of options, because we all got the option to stream and drive or not, but what could happen if you do stream and drive from a practical point of view?
Yeah. Well, from a practical point of view, one of the things that we talk about an awful lot when I'm challenging people and talking to people about the dangers of not just streaming and driving, but making phone calls or sending texts or making hands-free phone calls whilst they're driving, is that the argument that is often thrown back at you straight away is that, well, my phone is in a cradle. My phone is completely hands-free. I was on BBC Radio Stoke yesterday morning on a chat program, and it's one of those interesting things where they sort of queue you up, and I said, "Oh right," I said, "So are we going live?" And they said, "Oh yes," and I thought we were doing a pre-record, so I was like, "Right, we're going live," and they then sort of plug you in so you can hear the radio program as it goes out live, but your microphone is muted, so you can hear the person that they're talking to beforehand. And then eventually they bring you in. And I was listening to the chap beforehand who was saying he was an emergency response worker. He was an advanced driver. He was very careful. He didn't come across as sound like he was a police officer, but whatever department and agency he worked for, was saying that his mobile phone was hands-free and he didn't have to lift a hand or a finger off the steering wheel in order to take and make calls. Now, this comes up all the time because we say, I've got my hands on the steering wheel, I've got my eyes on the road, I'm perfectly fine. And the problem that we have with that is that it's not giving any attention or any thought to the fact that this is also needed as well. And cognitive distraction is something that people don't really immediately recognize. They recognize if they're not looking at the road, they sort of understand they're not looking at the road. They recognize if they are only holding on with one steering wheel, or they're steering with their knees whilst they do something with both hands. But often the cognitive distraction isn't immediately obvious to them. And so that's where a lot of the distraction comes in, is because you can have your eyes on the road and the hands on the wheel, but you've not got your mind on the job. That can create sort of all sorts of problems. As far as streaming and driving goes, it's very much the same. I think there are even, I could argue for and I could argue against, I suppose, but I think I think streaming and driving is probably more dangerous than texting and making calls, and that's because it's got that ongoing permanent interaction that requires people to read the comments, perform, talk to people, keep that conversation going, whilst doing all the other things that come naturally as part of the driving process. I mean, I did a short live broadcast on Twitter this morning. I parked up at the side of the road after I dropped my kids off at school and came back, parked in a lay-by, turned the engine off, and did a live stream broadcast just to say that we were going live at 10 o'clock this morning on Facebook. And one of the things that I sort of said there, I said, I could not do this broadcast that I'm doing now and looking at the phone and drive at the same time, because my mind is focused on what I want to say and what I'm trying to say, the message I'm trying to get across, not what's going on around me. And one of the things that sort of comes up for me when I think about that is that people say, oh, well, my mind is on the job and what have you. But I think they say, oh, the radio distracts you. And you think, well, sometimes you can listen to it. You can hear a piece of music start as you're driving down the road, and you go, "Oh, that's a great tune. I want to listen to that from the start." So you push the little button on your steering wheel and drop it back to the beginning to play that music again. And then you're driving down the road, but something on the road has got your attention, and suddenly you think, I was trying to listen to that song, and I'm not listening to that song because something else got my attention on the road. So you can suddenly be missing something. So if you reverse that, if you're focusing on your phone and on the conversation and all the rest of it, well, then you're missing stuff that's going on ahead on the road in front of you. But there's a lot of things that can happen. The basic things, really, if you're live streaming and driving, is that you're less aware of what's going on around you. What happens is that your vision when you're driving is quite wide. You have good wide peripheral vision. You're thinking about people coming down either side of your car, traffic that's coming in your mirrors. But your vision, once you start to stream and drive and focus onto something else other than driving, streaming and driving, or whatever it happens to be, your vision starts to tunnel. So you lose a lot of that peripheral vision, and you start to tunnel, and you're only really seeing what's immediately ahead of you. And in some cases, you're not even seeing that. You're looking, but you're not seeing. So you're less aware of what's going on around you. You're less likely to see road signs. You're more likely to be able to fail to maintain your lane or road position or a consistent speed. Imagine the car in front of you on the motorway that's meandering around and crossing the lane line and all the rest of it. There's a good chance that they are not concentrating on what they're doing, and that could be any number of reasons as to why they're not concentrating. But obviously, using the phone is one of the popular ones. You're more likely to tailgate if you're using a phone and streaming and driving. You will have increased reaction times and take longer to brake and stop, which again runs that risk of rear end collisions with the cars in front. And you're more likely to enter unsafe gaps in traffic because you're not really thinking and judging speed and distance correctly because you're focused somewhere else. So those are a number of factors that can come into play.
Okay, I'm going to come back to the three of us now. Slight adjustment, and my next question, and then it's over to see what's going on. Is it's an offence in the UK, and if it is, what happens?
The penalties. Right. This is a complicated area, and there's a whole lot of stuff that I could talk about here around the offences. But as far as the UK mobile phone legislation is concerned, which came into play in 2003, is that if your phone is not handheld, well, then you are not committing a mobile phone offence. In order to commit the offence of using a mobile phone whilst driving, it has to be handheld. And it has to be performing an interactive communication function. So live streaming, making a phone call, sending a text, that communication function has to be going on. This is why we have hands-free car kits, because that used to have to be built in manually years ago, but now come as standard, don't they? Bluetooth hands-free car kits that will allow you to operate your phone without actually holding it, so you don't commit the offence. So, in order to commit that offence, you need to be holding the phone and be involved in an interactive communication function. There are other offences that can come into play, such as not being in proper control of a motor vehicle because you're holding your phone, or you're concentrating on your phone and doing something else with your phone that means that your driving is being affected. Holding the phone or in a cradle, but you're concentrating so much on what's going on your phone. If you imagine sort of, I'm looking straight ahead driving and my phone is down here in a cradle pointing at me whilst I drive. I shared a video of a guy doing that this morning on Periscope, but you're looking down at the phone, then looking back at the road and looking down at the phone. And so that can affect your ability to maintain your position. So therefore you're not in proper control of the vehicle. if you're involved in a collision or something happens of a more serious nature, or your driving is significantly impaired beyond that of a normal driver, well, then you can be looking at driving without due care and attention, or worse. So it's a difficult one. I think personally, the biggest problem that we have at the moment in the UK with the mobile phone legislation, and we are not, in comparison to some places in the United States, they're only just banning handheld mobile phone use. Wow. Some states are completely onto hands-free and all the rest of it, but some states are just going and saying, we've decided we're going to ban handheld mobile phone use by drivers. And you think, you've got a great opportunity there to go from, you can use your phone however you like, to don't use it at all, and leapfrog all that hands-free handheld stuff and go straight to where the safety factor is. But often they sort of take small steps as opposed to huge ones. But the legislation in the UK came into play in 2003. In 2002, a study by the Transport Research Laboratory, TRL, had produced statistics and evidence to show that if you were using a handheld or hands-free mobile phone, your reaction times increased more than somebody who was at the drink-drive limit. So before the legislation came out, there was evidence to show that hands-free and handheld phone calls were as dangerous as somebody at the drink-drive limit. But the legislation didn't reflect that.
No. Right, just
now
to catch up.
Yeah,
sorry.
I was going to say, so
right, just to bring us up to date on our comments that are coming in. Karen Canna is saying, I keep trying to make this point to people who do this. Hands-free is still distracted, and it's different to talking to a passenger in some way. Okay, I'll come back to that point.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Neil. Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Okay, and also with us today is Paul Cordings, and Paul is saying, Neil, you should post the carrot and knife video again. Very impactful and thought-provoking.
I am going to. It's on YouTube. It's on my YouTube channel, and that will be going out today. That's just for sort of clarity. I will post it later, but you know these people who do this thing where they have a knife and their fingers splayed, and they do the knife between the fingers really, really fast. Well, I did it really slowly with a knife. And then I replaced my fingers with carrots because I don't want to stab myself in the finger.
Well, no.
And used carrots as an example of my fingers, and then did it with my eyes closed, not looking at what I'm doing. It's taking your eyes off the job in hand. And of course, immediately I'm stabbing into the carrots, and you think, well, if you take your eyes off the road, so yes, I will share that, Paul. Yeah, I've got it in my list of things to do.
You must have a long list of things to do. Anyway, a comment from Karen is, I rarely have the radio on now. Being honest, it's too busy concentrating on driving. And from Paul again, the biggest problem we have is drivers who are focused on the penalties and not the dangers, and they're putting themselves and others road users at risk. So basically, I just paraphrase, it should be focused on the driving, not on the fines you get.
I think I know what Paul's telling us there is that Paul is a sergeant with the North Yorkshire Roads Policing Group, big supporter of Don't Stream and Drive, and a massive advocate for road safety. And people do focus on the penalty, and I think one of the other things that people do is that within any sort of legislation like this, where there is a penalty that's imposed if you're caught engaged in this type of behavior, is that there needs to be a fear of being caught. And if there's no fear of being caught, well, suddenly the penalty doesn't make any difference. And so it becomes problematic then to try and enforce it, because people think, well, I'm not going to get caught, so I might as well take the risk. So that creates problems in itself. And there's also an awful lot of self confirmation or self-affirmation bias, which basically means that people will quite readily and quite happily criticize other people who use their phones whilst they're driving, but will also say, but I'm okay because I'm safe and I never touch mine, and you think, no, you're not. But so there's sort of like everybody else is bad, but I'm okay because I do it safely. And I think that creates another problem as well.
John and I know somebody who does that, and he's certain that he's quite safe driving because he puts the cam on the dashboard before he sets off. He never looks at it whilst he's driving. And there are people that we're never going to persuade. Just anyway, over to a point from Sue Butcher. And if you want to speak about Sue in a moment, but I'll just read Sue's comment out, if I may. One of the issues I've come across is that employees find that in order to do their job, they cannot take phone calls when driving. They can't not take phone calls when driving. This is a particular issue with salespeople and people who drive between loads of appointments every day. The onus here is on the employer, who is in effect making it impossible not to use your phone.
Absolutely. What did we ever do before the mobile phone? How did we ever make any business, and how did we ever successfully run businesses before the mobile phone? If the mobile phone is so essential to day-to-day business. And so you can't write a report or complete a sales ledger or your profit and loss account whilst you're driving down the road. But suddenly, because of the technology and the fact that and how improved mobile phones have become, the mobile phone has now become this essential business tool that allows people to conduct business in between their appointments. And so there are so many people on the roads using the mobile phones whilst they drive because it's now become deemed and accepted as a necessary part of the way that their business operates. I've campaigned for a little while about this, and campaign is probably the wrong word. I've raised and highlighted this a number of times, and always point to one company in particular as an example of best practice, because I do believe that companies should now start looking at non-use policies for their mobile workforce. When we think about the Milton Keynes crash on the M1, where as a very quick scenario, a truck driver who was tired and falling asleep stopped stationary in lane 1, not on the hard shoulder, stopped in lane 1 and went to sleep. Foreign driver by the name of Masurak. I can't remember his first name, but Masurak. It was in the early hours of the morning. A minibus on the way to the airport that was full of people came up behind this HGV in lane 1, suddenly realized it was stationary, didn't have enough time to get out into lane 2 to get past, so had to come to a stop. So now you've got a HGV and a minibus stopped in lane 1 on the motorway. Chap in a FedEx articulated lorry coming down lane 1 on his mobile phone, talking to a friend. Now imagine now you've got unlimited minutes on your mobile phone. You can just plug it in and have it on charge all the time and talk all night to your other drivers on the phone about football or whatever. And he said at the time, we were talking about Trump and nonsense. His whole vision was completely zoned in. They call it, I hate the term, but they call it inattentional blindness. David Wagstaff on his mobile phone, just having a conversation, but otherwise apparently not distracted, and the phone call was hands-free, therefore legal, ploughed straight into the back of the minibus at 56 miles an hour and crushed it between his truck and the truck that was in front of the minibus stationary, and it killed 8 people. Now, if anybody says to me that a hands-free phone call is not distracting, I will point them straight to that, because he was completely and utterly distracted, and he's either not looking or he's looking but not seeing because he's so focused on his conversation that everything else that's of vital importance, driving his 40-ton truck safely, and is not going to has gone out of the window. And so we need to look at non-use policies. And the company that I always point to is Shell. Shell UK, the oil company, they have a strict and rigid non-use policy. And if their staff are identified as using a mobile phone whilst they're driving their company vehicle or their truck or whatever it happens to be, they go into a discipline process. And you think, that's so enlightening and so encouraging, but we need more people to get involved with that, because it's become accepted practice that making calls whilst you drive around is perfectly normal. And the additional problem that comes from that is the legislation in 2003 said hands-free is okay. Now, we know that hands-free is not okay, but for the last 16 years, everybody's understood the legislation to believe that hands-free is okay. And so the driving public have been conditioned into thinking it's safe, when in reality it's not. So now when you say to somebody, you shouldn't even be making a hands-free call, really, and they go, they'll be ridiculous, it's legal, we've been doing that for years. And you think, yeah, that's because the information that you've had was wrong from the start.
Right. Just a note from Paul is saying, don't forget to mention well, can you read it, John?
FOMO.
Right. Sorry, can you read the whole of it?
We've become a generation who frightened we might miss something.
Absolutely. Mobile phone, FOMO, fear of missing out. Mobile phones if you think 2003 and go back to sort of Nokia bricks and these old flip phones and all that sort of stuff, you could send a text and make a phone call. Some of them didn't even have an address book, for goodness sake. You know, you didn't have very little functionality on them at all. And they've exploded in their functionality. So your mobile phone now is giving you a ping every time an email arrives. It's sending you a notification alert because something that you're bidding on eBay has just you've just been outbid, or somebody bid on something that you're trying to sell, or WhatsApp is sending you notification that somebody sent you a message, and Facebook is sending you a message, and Facebook pages, if you've got some of those, are sending you pages saying somebody's followed your page or somebody's sent a message to your page. There are so many alerts and notifications, and we want to be this completely switched on, always on type culture that we've become. That means that the phone sits there in a cradle. You're not making any hands-free or handheld calls. You're not doing anything else, but your phone is over here in a cradle going ping, 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 and that fear of missing out drives you to look at it. And if you're only glancing at it just to go, oh, it's something to do with eBay, I'll have a look when I get to the shops or wherever you go and get to work. But it's that bit that's the problem. One of the things we talk about with Don't Stream and Drive is we say that with Periscope, you get the comments that come through on the broadcast, so you can read the comments and reply to the people that are watching. If you're driving and you take your eyes off the road, read the comment, focus your reply, look back up to the road again and regain situational awareness, which will probably be limited because you've got tunnel vision, it can take 5 or 6 seconds. At 40 miles an hour, that's the length of a football pitch, blindfolded. And you think anything could happen in that space of time. So, but we do, fear of missing out has become a big problem. People can't leave their devices alone. They've become an extension of our hands to the point that they can't put them down or leave them alone.
I have my phone on permanent do not disturb.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost always now call people back.
Yeah.
Unless I'm not in the car.
Yeah.
And even then I've forgotten to take it off do not disturb. So
Yeah.
I invariably look at my phone to discover I've missed 3 calls.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm happier with it like that, to be honest.
Yeah. My phone picks up automatically as soon as I'm moving and just jumps into do not disturb mode. And then I get no alerts, I get no notifications. If somebody sends me a text message, it sends a message back to say, I'm driving, I'll read your message when I come to a stop. And then but it also says, if it's urgent, prefix it with urgent, and then I'll get the notification, at which point I think, wait a minute, that's a text message notification. It shouldn't be coming through. It must be urgent. Therefore, I can stop, pull over at the side of the road and see what it's about. Phone calls. I've not quite bottomed this with my iPhone yet. Phone calls, it should block my phone calls, except people in my favorites list, but it doesn't appear to do that. And I'd add there that even if it's somebody who's in my favorite list that calls, I tend to not answer it, stop, call them back, or answer it and say, I'm driving, I'm stopping, wait a minute. And I pull over and won't say anything else until I'm stopped, engine off. And then I say, right, I've stopped, I've got the engine off, what's the matter? You know, because then you're in a position to take the call sensibly. You can just imagine, you think, well, you're taking a phone call from your partner and you're driving, and it could be, where are you? Oh, I'm 5 minutes away. Or it could be, I've just had a phone call from the school, there's been an accident, little one's going to hospital, we need to get, and then you think, and you're driving while you're taking that information. That could have all sorts of consequences, couldn't it? It's just horrific. So I'm always stopped.
I don't do anywhere near the mileage I used to do, of course, which is, you know, a big key difference.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I would not think, you know, ill of doing 35, 40,000 miles a year because I covered the whole of the UK.
Yeah.
I now consider a trip to Tamworth, which is 17 miles, to be a trip out.
A day out. I mean, it's like, I mean, many years ago, before I joined the police, I drove vans for a dispatch company, and I was logging up 100,000 miles a year. And you think 100,000 miles a year, and if I think about that now with a mobile phone as well, because we didn't have mobile phones in those days, we had a two-way radio. Other than that, we had nothing. And you think, how much phone use would now become part of that sort of work, and that's a real danger. You know, you think about all the things that come into driving that affect people's ability to drive. You know, fatigue. You put fatigue with a mobile phone with other, you know, and you think, crikey, it's just there's that all the problems are just piling up on top. The, you know, the outcome is almost inevitable. So, but
I still see idiots, though. I had a near miss on Sunday. I was queued to turn right at the traffic lights, and there was a red Fiesta coming downhill. I was turning right, and the road goes downhill, and she was on her phone. She actually had it in her hand, and she went straight through the red lights. And if I had realised that she wasn't watching the lights, she'd have broadsided me. Yeah.
This is it, because it's so focused on one thing that everything else goes out of the window. And that's the difficulty. That's like with the carrot thing. You're so focused on something else that you're actually stabbing yourself in the finger while you're trying to keep an eye on something. You know, I'll post that later. It is a good example of where your focus and attention needs to be, where you're doing something where you could really, really hurt yourself or somebody else.
Would you like to talk for a moment about the people who are supporting Don't Stream and Drive 2019?
Oh gosh, yeah, there are so many. There really are. When I look back to, I've not done it this year because things have been different this year. But for the last 3 years, I've always created an image and put the logo of every organisation, police force, or whatever that has said, yes, we've signed up to the Thunderclap and we'll support Don't Stream and Drive. And when I look back to 2016, it's the Don't Stream and Drive logo and a few sort of logos peppered around. And then you look at 2017 and there's a good increase. And you look at 2018 and it was like boom, the whole thing was full. The logos were going so small to get them all on one PowerPoint slide image that sometimes you couldn't even see who they were. But to put some context to that, Thunderclap went out of business last year because of the changes Twitter made to the API, because of fake news and things, and the fact that it was potentially linked to spam. So although it was a great tool for us, it was being abused by some people, and therefore it didn't fit with Twitter's new terms of business, and so it just went out of business overnight. So this year I've gone down the more traditional route that a lot of organizations use, which is create a media pack, send that information out to all the people who you think you can support. So that went out to everybody that's previously supported Don't Stream and Drive Day. And I've had a lot of positive responses, and even from the sort of couple of hours that I've been looking at social this morning, is that there are a lot of organizations that have previously supported the campaign who are coming in and putting content out. I can't name them all. I've certainly seen content from Staffordshire Police. I've certainly seen content from Leicestershire Police. The AA are involved, and their president has been posting content. Devon and Cornwall Fire and Rescue, Avon and Somerset Police and Crime Commissioner, Devon and Cornwall's Police and Crime Commissioner, a couple of neighbourhood policing teams out in South Wales have been involved. So it's all starting to pick up. So there's lots of police forces involved, and community neighbourhood teams and road policing teams that are all getting involved. There's a whole... I often go through all the businesses and things first and then come to the most important bit afterwards. So I'm going to switch that over and say the most important people that support Don't Stream Drive are like you guys who support me every year and help me with the video and the live stuff on the day. And Stephen, you've done far more than I could have expected or hoped for me this year with all the bot work on the TCS page and all that sort of stuff, which is great. But it's the police officers around the country who are on social, who understand the nuts and bolts about why I do this and feel happy and comfortable sharing the content. Members of the public who've supported me for years, who get behind it and share the information and the message, which is fantastic. But then we've got road safety organisations, Brake Charity, Road Safety GB, Police Professional Magazine, Irwin Mitchell Solicitors have been a great support over the years and have had me at a number of their events talking to people about Don't Stream and Drive. We've got, as I said, police forces, fire and rescue services, individual private companies. You know, I even saw something this morning. I've never seen them previously as a supporter, but they put a tweet out this morning to say that that they were supporting the Don't Stream and Drive Day, and that all their efforts of use on the road was around safety. And that's a company that I've seen on the roads over the years for decades, which is a transport haulage company called Knights, and they're from a place called Old. And so the side of their truck say Knights of Old. But I've seen a tweet from them this morning, and I know the company. I've had no contact with them or association with them, but you just sort of see how people are picking up the message. But then specifically for sort of special things, I mean, Paul Cording always gives me lots of great support. Chris Harris from Norfolk, Sergeant Chris Harris, also gives me lots of great support and have been brilliant over the years. Lee Thomas, Constable Chaos, has always done great work as well. And then this year as well, we've got things like Sue Butcher, who's given us access to the metrics on her company's social media tracking software, which is invaluable to me and great. So I'm really grateful, you know, and it's just, it always, I always find it quite humbling how people are prepared to get behind it and help because they see how important it is too. And that's, what better support can I have than people who willingly volunteer their time and their resources to support it because they believe in it.
John's on his way back. It's a team, isn't it? It's a growing team that's growing.
It is. And it's grown year on year. It really does get bigger. This year is a bit of an unknown because I've had to deal with it in a different way. Thunderclap was a great way of getting people involved because you could get them to sign up to the Thunderclap, and if they did that, they could effectively forget about Don't Stew and Drive from that point onwards. But I knew that Thunderclap would send a social message on their behalf on that day. This year we've not got that, so we're relying more on people's goodwill and relying more on people's ability to remember or to schedule content for the day so that they know that it's going to go out. You know, there's some big hitters over in America. Chris Strubb has posted content this morning already, and I know that I've got content hopefully coming that's scheduled from Joel Comm and also from Brian Fanzo, who are massive social media guys over in the States. I'm sure you both know those two.
We do.
And they're going to push content out and have been great supporters. So it is a huge team of people who are prepared to get behind it, and it's quite humbling, to be honest, when you look and you think, crikey, you know, over the years, a reach of over 100 million people is just insane. But brilliant at the same time.
Right. Now, as Neil said, Thunderclap disappeared, which left a hole. And what we've been doing is, if you type DSAD in the comments, Don't Stream and Drive in the comments, then you'll be taken over to Facebook Messenger. And at 11:30 this morning, you've got 40 minutes to get there. 11:30 this morning, you'll get a broadcast message, and it will give you 3 tweets, and you can tweet out one of them, 2 of them, or 3 of them,
or all of them. Yeah,
or all of them. Yeah, do them all. Do them all. You basically, you've got tweet 1, tweet 2, and tweet 3. You've got a picture of each, so you can decide which one. Press the tweet button. It takes you over to a website called Click to Tweet. You press the tweet button. That's it, and that tweet will then go out. Every single tweet counts. So if you can do all 3, please do. If you're signed up before 11:30, you get the message. If you sign up after 11:30, we're running again at 6 o'clock tonight. So you've got 2 chances, and all you need to do is type DSAD in the comments. And the beauty of it is that if you sign up this year, then you're already there for 2020.
2020,
so, Yep. So join the messenger just by typing DSAD in the comments, and everything else is taken care of. And to the persons who, well, this is, we're in a state of flux. We're trying different things. So if we miss a beat, our apologies. We will have it down pat next year. Okay.
Yeah, it's certainly been a learning process for me. And as I said before, I'm very grateful for all the help and support you've given me with that. And I still don't fully understand it all, I don't think, but that's fine, because I don't need to understand it. What I do understand is that I've seen it in operation and I know that it works. And so that's great stuff.
Steve's got a course on it, you know.
I'll bet, yes. I've just had a quick look at the stats, and we're up to 14 million impressions.
Brilliant.
So it's growing all the time. It's brilliant.
All right. Message from Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you.
Right. Okay. Now, I unfortunately I don't have the source for this, so, but I did read it. I know I read it. The police force in the south of England are actually trying out a device which can tell whether a mobile phone is switched on in a car and transmitting.
Yes, they can.
Can you tell us more about that?
This is a sign that has been developed.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's been developed by a company called Wesco Tech. The owner of Wesco Tech is a former chief inspector, a lovely guy, and he went to work for that company, and that was his only intention, just to go and work for them. And he went to work for them, and within a very short space of time, they said to him, well, we think you should take this business on and run it. And he's ended up as the head of the business. It's now his business. They launched these signs at the TISPOL, the European Traffic Police Network, TISPOL, at their annual conference in 2017. And what these do is they scan down the road and will identify traffic coming towards them, like your normal speed signs that flash up and go, it's a 30, and they flash the thing at you, or it's a 40, whatever it happens to be. Works on that technology, but in addition to that, it also detects if a mobile phone is in use. If a mobile phone is in use, the sign then illuminates. So you've got A, a car coming towards you, B, mobile phone signal being detected and in use, boom, the sign illuminates with the picture of a mobile phone with a line through.
It can detect Bluetooth as well, though, can't it?
Yeah, it can. So it's not infallible, and I think Wesco Tech would be more than happy to accept that, because it can't differentiate between the driver and the passenger. So it could be the passengers on the phone and the sign flashes up. But if you think about it, and I fully endorse this sign, because if you think about it, if you're driving down the road and your passenger's on the mobile phone and you're driving perfectly safely, and then this sign goes boom, and it lights up with a mobile phone and a warning line through it, you go, oh, that's interesting. Never seen one of those before. Doesn't apply to me because I'm safe. But blimey, it's picked up your phone. It's sowing seeds, isn't it? For me, it's throwing the seeds out, and that may just sort of lodge into certain people's sort of mindsets. Then go, oh yeah, mobile phones. Don't use your phone while you're driving. The rest of it, and so it seeks to act as a sort of reminder and a deterrent to some degree, and a behavior changer by sort of showing that it can pick up that information, and it could have been you that was on the phone whilst you were driving. So, I think that there's room for those to expand and grow as technology develops. But I think what a great start, and I think Hampshire, was it Hampshire, Stephen? I think Hampshire have launched them first, or maybe Thames Valley, or both, one of the other.
Certainly that neck of the woods.
Yeah. Chris Spinks, I think his name is. Chris Spinks is the owner of the company Wesco Tech. But yeah, they're, right, and doing it, and they're a business and they're there to make money, which is perfectly acceptable, but they've got a real strong road safety ethic behind them as well, which is great. They're doing it all for the right reasons.
Do you think things will change when we have self-drive cars? Or do you think we will get self-drive cars? That's the first question.
Do I think we'll get self-drive cars? Yes, I think we will eventually. I certainly don't think that the infrastructure and everything that we need for self-drive cars is there yet, and that's going to take, in my view, decades and decades to be implemented. But the car manufacturers seem to be in a rush to outdo one another in order to be the first people to say, look, we've got a fully autonomous car, and it's the safest thing ever. So I suppose in competition terms, that's probably quite good, because it's going to drive the technology onwards. I'm a bit old school. I quite like driving cars. I quite like being involved and that engagement that comes with driving a car. The prospect of sitting back and letting the car do it makes me go, well, why would I do that? I enjoy driving. That was something that I like doing and always have. The biggest danger for me as we go through this these development stages is that cars will have limited autonomy that will still require driver interaction. But I think we know from the crash in Arizona, was it Uber in Arizona, where they were doing the autonomous vehicles?
Yeah, and he was inbound streaming, wasn't he?
Yeah, they were watching television or something, weren't they?
The Voice.
Yeah, so they're watching TV on their phone, and you think, what that technology? Your logical mindset says, if the car is taking some of those responsibilities from you, that means you've got more capability to be even safer. What it actually seems to do is you sort of say, well, the car's got hold of that, so I can play chess on my phone or watch TV. I can do something else. Not I can devote more of my resources to road safety. I can do other things that I couldn't do if I was driving. So I almost think that until we've got a car that is completely safe, drives you from A to B, and you could be fast asleep from one end of the journey to the other, wake up and you're parked up outside the location where you need to be, well, then we're going to have some huge issues with road safety, because people will just put too much faith and too much confidence in the automation that the car provides, and by doing so, relax their own road safety sense, if you like.
So the future is,
well, the future is autonomous cars. They tell us the future is electric cars. The future is all those kind of things. And the European Union have just made an announcement, haven't they? They're going to put speed. No, I'll get this wrong. It's not. Is it speed limiters or speed controls or delimiters or something? There's some speed control that's going into modern cars. It's going to sort of allow the driver to still have control, but the car will certainly reach a point and say, well, it's 30 down here. I mean, we've got cars now that, they'll pick up the speed from a sat nav and say, this road is 30 miles an hour. So they'll say that you should be driving at 30. And the car will limit itself to 30 miles an hour. But if you put your foot down, it will accelerate beyond 30 miles an hour. We've also got cars now that if you're on a 30 mile an hour road, but the roadworks are out and they put signs up that say 20, it's reading the road signs and going, hang on a minute, it should be 30, but I've just read a road sign that says it's 20, and drops your speed again. So there's things like that coming into play which will be useful. And I think mobile phones and the use of them will evolve in similar ways. The future for Don't Stream and Drive, this is an interesting one. One of the things that I often think about is that I've got just under 2 years to go within the police, at which point I can no longer be Sergeant TCS, because I'll be Mr. Jewson Smith as opposed to Sergeant Jewson Smith. So I've got to start looking then about what I'm going to do with the campaign. Do I run the campaign as an individual? Do I keep it going? Do I keep working with it? Do I keep running with it? Do I end up in employment for a road safety organisation or a research body, or the government, or the Department of Transport, or Highways England, or anything like that, where I can still have a road safety role? Or do I look to pass the campaign on and allow somebody else to add their unique insights and angles to it, who's still within the policing context, and then give them my support? I don't know, but where the campaign goes will remain to be seen. But the future, as I see it at the moment, is that this distraction is not going away, and it's going to take us decades to work through. I mean, in I think it was 2017. We'd hit 50 years of campaigning against drink drive from when the initial blow in the bag breathalyzer introduced in 1967. We hit 50 years of campaigning against drink drive, and drink drive is still an issue. Nowhere near as bad as it used to be, nowhere near, but it's still a problem. And I think distracted driving, and in any way with a mobile phone, and in particular with streaming and driving, is such a big problem that it's almost socially accepted at the moment, like drinking and driving was, that it's just part of what we do, and it's okay. It's what we do. And so it's going to take us decades to rectify that, to help people understand that it's not okay. And so who knows, in 50 years time, I'll be over 100 if I'm still here. But who's to say that in 50 years time, somebody's saying, look, we still come, it all started in 2016 with Don't Stream and Drive Day, and it's much less of a problem than it ever used to be, but it's still there. And I think it will probably, empirically, I think we've got a lot of evidence to show that it will probably follow the same sort of path, and it will take many, many years to significantly reduce it. Probably never eliminate it. Nice to eliminate it, but significantly reduce it to the point where it's socially unacceptable, like drink driving is now to most right-minded people.
Right, before John closes the show, which is tradition, just a reminder to everybody, the Messenger broadcast goes out at 11:30 today and 6 p.m. today. And Neil, would you like to sort of summarize today and what it means?
Yeah, it's all about there are a few people over the years who've sort of come to me and said, well, what's the point in a Don't Stream and Drive Day, and how's that going to stop people streaming and driving? And it's a very difficult thing to identify in traditional ways as police officers to detect and therefore prosecute people for. And so you say, well, what's the point of that if you're not prosecuting anybody for it? But the purpose of the campaign has always been to raise that level of awareness, help people understand that it actually happens. So many people who come to me and say, I didn't even know that was a thing. Why? It's so sad that we even need a Don't Stream and Drive Day. But it's just to sort of raise that awareness in people who don't understand it's even a thing, raise that awareness and bring it to the attention of people who are doing it so that they can understand the dangers behind it and understand the theory behind why we're saying it's dangerous, as opposed to just sort of saying it's dangerous, don't do it, and not giving any evidence to back up why. Just sort of say it's dangerous and this is why. And we're talking about eyes, hands, cognitive distractions. We're talking about how your vision tunnels and all these kind of things. And so as far as the day is concerned, it's about sharing the message. It's about making that hashtag visible on social as much as possible so that it crosses the radar of as many people that we can possibly get it in front of. It might be that if somebody's timeline sees one tweet with gets one tweet with Don't Stream and Drive in it, they won't see it. But if they get half a dozen, it might just be the thing that draws them in and goes, I've seen that about 6 times today now. What is it? Bang, click, they look, they see, oh, I see. I didn't know that was the thing. Or, oh, I've done that in the past. Probably right, I shouldn't really. It always takes me back to the very first person in Florida that I called out for streaming and driving, and something that I stopped doing very quickly, but I challenged him in his broadcast, and I suddenly thought, what if he has a crash reading my comment saying what you're doing is dangerous? That's, not good. But he went live about half an hour later, sat outside a coffee shop in Florida, and he said, I've just been called out by a policeman in the UK for live streaming while I was driving, and you know what? He's absolutely right. It never even crossed my mind that it was so stupid to do. And for me, I've always said Don't Stream and Drive was a complete success from that point because we changed the behavior of one person. And he then becomes an advocate for it, and you hope that they'll talk to other people, and they'll talk to other people, and the message just continues to spread and grow. And the more people know about it, the more people can sort of contemplate whether or not they see it as dangerous or not, but whether or not, and also whether or not it helps them to change their behavior around mobile phone use in general in the car. So it's post, share, put the hashtag on everything. Even I've replied to a lot of tweets this morning, and I've kicked myself because what I should do is I should reply, instead of just saying thank you or thank you for your support, I should put thank you for supporting Don't Stream and Drive Day, because we're getting the hashtag in again and we're using the hashtag. It's about using the hashtag and getting the message out there as much as possible. Totally. And over to John to close this show, and we will be back at 2:00 this afternoon. 2:00, yeah, John.
2:00. So, in my usual way, it's goodbye from him and it's goodbye from him, even if they are down there or over there or up there. But thank you for watching us. We will be back at 2 with an update and some more figures of where the campaign's going. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. See you later. Bye-bye.